Hey y'all, and welcome to our second episode of Managing Manhattan. I'm Dylan Pichulik, the CEO and founder of XL Real Property Management. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most critical components of real estate investing, the income. And as you know, when we're talking about income in real estate investing, we mean the rent. Specifically, how do we get our rent as high as possible when it comes to ultra luxury rentals in New York City? Obviously, the goal of any investment is to get the highest level of profit possible. So we need our income as high as we can get it. We need our expenses as low as possible, because that ultimately is going to determine the ultimate health and success of the asset. We have an exciting episode today because we're going to be sitting with one of the true legends in the real estate brokerage community here in New York City. We're going to be talking to a 27-year veteran who has been the #1 agent for the past 8 years running over here at Brown Harris Stevens.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. We work with Brown Harris Stevens and many other top real estate firms, staging their homes to sell quickly and at the highest price possible. Our staging is affordable without sacrificing quality or design. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
Stevens. I want to welcome our first guest, Lisa Lippman. Welcome to Managing Manhattan.
Thanks for having me.
Great. It's such a pleasure to see you. It's crazy. I was just thinking, I first met you probably 20 years ago when I was working in the real estate development world. And I have to say, you gave me one of the most valuable, I don't even think you intended to, but you gave me one of the most valuable pieces of advice that anyone has given me that actually helped shape my career and real estate. And you said 2 small words to me. You said, or let's call it 3, just be nice. And I was working in the development world. It's obviously kind of a rough and tumble kind of industry. And it shook me in a way that made such an impact that I still think about it today as I'm driving the, bus, my business, forward. And I always reflect back. So I have to thank you. And I don't think you understand what an impact that actually had on me, but it helped shape who I am today. Yeah. So thank you.
I actually remember that you represented the developer of a conversion on Park Avenue, 823 Park, which coincidentally I just put into contract with the people were buying back then from your developer are now selling it. I think it was about 2007, so not quite 20 years ago.
Not quite,
but
okay,
close,
18.
No, close, yeah. And I think you were a little fresh. You were young and fresh. And I remember thinking, geez, this guy's kind of young and fresh. And my client's spending $13.5 million and just be nice. And I'm going to give credit to my mom, who once told me when I was a kid that you could say almost anything if you said it nicely. So I think that I try to always remember that. And there have been moments since then that I've said it to the people who work for me. And I've got a bunch of younger people who work for me. And they all always behave nicely because they know that that's really important. And, I think that sometimes we all forget that we're in a service industry. And part of having a good experience in real estate is having the person providing you service be kind and be nice about whatever it is. Sometimes we're delivering good news, sometimes we're delivering bad news. But if we do it in a nice way, I think it feels a lot better.
No, you're absolutely right. And some advice to a youngin on the come up. It shaped who I am today, and I very, very great advice, and especially in this industry.
I probably was being a little bit of a mom at that point because I've got 3 boys. So
sometimes you need it, and now I have 3 boys, which is even more insane.
Yeah.
I was looking at your track record. I mean, 8 years straight as a top agent, slinging sales listings from $45 million, rental listings $95,000. What does somebody get for $95,000 a month in New York City?
So that deal was a very large, very sexy house downtown. It was super cool, had, the amenities of a condo building within the house.
Wow.
And it was just a really unique property. And it was perfect for the client. So
Wow. It's insane. You start to look at some of these rental listings, and as you know, Excel specializes in managing a lot of these properties. We just did a deal together where I represent the owner and the management side over at 45 East 22nd, and it's, sometimes it's unfathomable when you take a step back and you look at it, and you're like, oh, this is only $25,000 a month, which is what, $300,000 a year in income. So, it's impressive. And what's been the secret to staying on top for 8 straight years?
Well, I think there's a few secrets. The first secret of mine, at least, is that I never assume that I'm going to be on the top again. I assume I won't be. And I don't kill myself about that. I sort of, at the end of the year, I think, wow, that's, it's great that we did so well. And it would be great to do it again, but you have to assume that somebody's going to beat you out. And you have to assume that that was a great year, and hopefully you'll have a really good year the next year, but it may not be as great. And from there, you just do your work, and you put your head down, and you work hard, and you work smart, and you just try to do the best you can every single day. And that's what I do. I saw that example from my dad, who was a primary care physician, super different, obviously, than what we do. But he loved his job. He went to work every day. He worked really hard. I never saw him slack. He worked every day, even if he wasn't in the office. He was reading. He would read medical journals. He would stay on top of things. And I try to do the same thing. I do work every day. I have for 27 years. I think I had a break for 4 days once when we went to Cuba. And back then there was zero cell service in Cuba. There was no.
What was that like? That would be like a dream. Like nobody can reach me for 4 days.
I remember my husband saying, "Wow, I've never seen you like this. This is crazy," But in general, I work every day, but I don't mind it. So I think my secret is just working hard, working smart, and trying to stay positive.
You hear that, folks? Humility. One of the most important lessons, and as Lisa acknowledges herself as number one for 8 years, you never know what the future is. We're only as good as our last deal, and keep a humble attitude. So Lisa, let's talk about the market. Let's talk about these. You sling a lot of ultra luxury real estate listings. What helps owners achieve the highest rental price for their listings, and what's the secret that goes behind it?
So I think that's a great question. Very often people will say to me, Lisa, should I rent or buy? Right? Because sometimes, especially people who are in the investment world, don't understand why they would put down a huge chunk of money if they could just rent something for the rest of their lives, because they think about the lost value of what they could be earning on that money.
The opportunity cost, right?
The opportunity cost, exactly. I wasn't saying it well. And what I try to explain, and which is really true, is you often can't rent what you can buy. And that's the issue. So you can often buy something much more special than you can rent. Now, having said that, in New York City, we have lots of special rental properties. There are some really fancy rental buildings. Then you also have the opportunity to rent a house from somebody. You can rent a condo that's owned by somebody. Sometimes you can rent a co-op. So what it means then is if you want to achieve the highest rental value for your property, you have to make your property feel really special. So what I try to explain to people who sometimes come to me and say, oh, I haven't been able to sell my co-op that needs work, I'm thinking maybe I'm going to rent it, is you're generally not going to do very well with that kind of a rental, because when people rent, they don't want to do any work. They don't want to invest any money. People want to rent something. If they're going to spend a decent amount of money, they want to rent something that's in perfect condition, that feels really move-in ready, comfortable, perfect. So conversely, if you own a property that you want to maximize the amount you're going to rent for, make it feel perfect. No nicks, no dings, no signs of wear or tear. Really make that place feel super special. That really makes a difference.
Right. You want someone to feel like they can move in, they can envision themselves there. We have countless conversations with our owners where we make recommendations. Hey, we should, this wallpaper has holes in it, or hey, this is broken. And the owner response is, well, get me a tenant, we'll talk about it. But, look,
it doesn't work that way.
Some people have that imagination and that trust that you're actually going to make good on it. But wouldn't you rather them walk into the home, immediately envision them there and be like, instead of them being like, this is kind of run down, and would the owner consider refinishing the floors? Would the owner consider fixing the tattered shades? Like, you want them to walk in and be like, hey, this is our home, and not, see all these flaws that in a lot of cases are easily fixable. And we could just, but the owner is so hesitant, I don't want to make the investment. Or you have some owners who don't well, I live there and it didn't bother me at all, but just because it didn't bother you doesn't mean it's gonna not bother the tenant, especially in some of these cases where they're plopping down, at 95,000 a month, they're spending $1 million a year on rent. We have to make it look the way that it should.
Perfect.
And you want them to walk in and they're gonna have that expectation. I can't have a paint job for $1 million in rent. $20,000 goes towards the actual expense. So I definitely understand your impression of that. What else can we do to get higher rent? Like what else goes into it?
I mean, the other things I think are, certain incentives, sometimes 1 month free rent, offering to pay a broker fee, all these things that, the mindset of somebody renting is obviously a little bit different than somebody buying. You think of it as usually 1 to 2 years, maybe longer. You don't want to invest your own money in renovating it, and you definitely don't want to have a lot of upfront costs that you feel like, what if I have to do this again in 1 or 2 years? So anything that you can do to minimize that, I think makes a big difference. And then I also, I think sometimes having the option of offering it furnished or not furnished, because I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this, more and more I find people are interested in renting places furnished, because it goes back to the other thing, especially at the higher price point. People rent something for a year or two for a lot of money. They don't really want to buy a whole bunch of furniture for an apartment that's not going to be a permanent place. I think the flexibility around a rental makes a big difference. Having an easy board package or an easy application process makes a big difference also. And then I really do believe, and I'm not just plugging you, knowing that the owner has a company like XL Property Management representing the owner and helping the tenant makes a big difference too. Because tenants don't want to get involved in how they figure out how to have the washing machine fixed, or if something rips or breaks or anything small, they don't want to have to deal with the owner. They may be fearful that they don't know how to deal with the building as well. So having a representative for the owner who's going to take care of all those things makes a big difference too.
Wow, you have so much great content in that response, and I have a lot of follow-up questions for you. And I want to say, look, I think especially in this market, especially in New York City, laws can be somewhat tenant-sided here. Having for the tenant to have a resource that they can reach out to take care of issues is vital. Mm-hmm. Because especially if you have a rental, do you want to, problems can arise at any time. Oftentimes, the owners are not here in New York City. They don't have the connections that a property manager like Excel would have. And then who are they going to call when there's a problem? Especially in a townhouse, right? Sometimes condo buildings or co-op buildings, some are more hands-on than others aren't. But you need somebody that can actually address their needs. Absolutely. And they pay more money for it. Mm-hmm. Because they're like, I have somebody who's here on the ground. I'm not dealing with somebody overseas or somebody even local who's super busy and maybe higher profile and unfocused because they have a life to run. I mean, that's a critical component, and it does help get rents up because they're like, hey, we have a professional property management company. They're here to take care of it. They're here to make sure things are streamlined. Like all those components go into it. And I want to talk about the rental thing because this is the furnished rental thing. It's a question I get all the time from owners. And do I furnish my rental? Do I leave it unfurnished? And we always go back to them and we say, look, it really depends also how you're doing it. If it's going to be partially furnished, sometimes that's not your friend because now the tenant still needs furniture, and now they've got to kind of design their furniture around what you already have. I think sometimes it can be an encumbrance. But if you've got an asset that is done to the nines and is well styled, I think in a lot of cases, especially at the high end, because sometimes these people are just here for a year or two because they're consulting in New York or they're shooting a movie. If you're going to furnish it, it should be done the right way. Do you agree with that? I mean, where's the validity there?
I totally agree. I mean, I think what people have to remember is I'm not a big fan of the reality real estate shows, and I don't think that the content of them is worthwhile or honest, to be fair. And I'm sorry if I've insulted anybody in the audience, but what they have done is they have formed people's perception of real estate. And in all of those television shows, every property is beautiful. Every property is staged beautifully. If you go to look at new development now, if the developer is smart, they've staged the apartments beautifully too. So that is what people imagine when they look at properties. That is why people don't want to see worn and tattered and torn. They want to see everything looking beautiful because that's what they've seen. And people also like to rent or buy the dream. They want it all put together. So if you do have beautiful furniture and it really looks put together, then I think it's a great idea to keep it that way and have the flexibility that you will rent it furnished. I do think the most important thing in rental is that word flexibility with a capital F. And the reason why I say that is you may find somebody who wants it fully furnished and they want everything. You may find somebody who likes it furnished, but they don't want all of it. You should be flexible about that too. And you may find somebody who doesn't want any furniture, and you should be flexible about getting those things out too. Obviously, it all depends on price, but that's how it is. That's the nature of the game with rentals because people come in all different forms and needing all different things.
Great, thank you so much. And I want to talk more about this. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
Great, we're back, and yeah, I want to talk more about that because obviously, we do want to be flexible. We don't want to lose deals because the tenant doesn't like the couch and we've got to store it. So I think that's of critical importance when it comes to furnishing. And let's talk about some new legislations coming up. We have this thing called the FAIR Act, which is going to mandate that whoever hires the broker is responsible for paying the fee. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this. Right now, we have a capitalist market, right? Free market reigns. When the market is lower, landlord oftentimes contributes 1 month broker fee. When the market's stronger, oftentimes the tenant pays it. What do you think the implication of the FAIR Act would be if it passes? I know they voted on it. We're still waiting for it to be signed. There's a lot of litigation, REBNY, this, that, the other. What do you think the implications of that law would be?
I mean, I really believe that all of it comes out in the wash. It's all fungible. So it's a little like now where things change with the sale market, right? So sellers don't have to offer buyer's broker commission anymore. And sellers have said to me, oh, if I don't have to do that, what do you think? Then I say, well, that's fine, but then you have to expect that people who bring a broker are going to pay less because they're going to have to pay their broker. So it comes out in what you're going to get. And I say the same thing. So you're going to find more people who won't hire brokers to look for rentals. They're going to go straight to the owner's broker. That means that the owner is going to have to pay their broker because they're the ones who have hired a broker, and then they're going to want more rent for that. So in the end, it all comes out. I think the most important thing in any kind of new legislation is that it's very, very clear for everybody to understand and that we get clear paperwork so that people understand that too. I actually think that the paperwork that just came out for the new sales, where now as a buyer's broker, you have to have your buyer sign paperwork, was a very good next step in that change within the purchasing market because it did lay out for buyers exactly where they stand.
Right.
And I've had one buyer, a new buyer, not sign the agreement. And you know what that showed to me? They don't really want a buyer's broker, and that's fine.
Yeah,
But
it's a testament to how serious they are as well,
exactly.
right?
Let me know that right now.
Yeah.
Everybody else didn't even flinch, and they signed the agreement. So whatever it happens, it's going to come out in the price. So, I think that a lot of these times the government thinks they're going to save the consumer money. They're not saving the consumer anything. Eventually, somebody has to pay for it.
Exactly.
And it comes out in the price of the rental. So.
Yeah, and that's my biggest concern. You have this populist legislation. Don't worry, we're going to protect you against those evil landlords and yada yada yada. We're gonna save you money. It's like, who are you saving money? Landlord doesn't have an additional 8.3% to pay it. What's wrong with the current system? When the market's good, it's a free market thing, but landlord has to come up with another 8.3%. I worry it's going to raise costs, right? And then costs are just going to go up. And who did we protect? We didn't actually protect anyone. Right. We, if anything, raised prices because now landlords are baking in the fact that they have to pay the fee. We've already squeezed landlords in a lot of cases. Okay, now, the regulations got tougher. We had those great laws of 2019 enacted that made it a little tougher for landlords. All you're doing is raising rents, and nobody wants that. But can we at least call a duck if we are going to enact these legislations, and stop pretending like we're protecting people? I don't know. I could go on and on about this concept because it drives me crazy. And if we're going to save people money, let's do it. But if we're just going to have to bake the cost in somewhere else, and you're paying it one way or another.
Well, I think it's like a lot of things that have come, that's happened in the last 10 to 20 years with more and more technology, is that people think that we can get rid of the middle person, whether it's a broker, whether it's a doctor. I think a lot of people think they can just go online and diagnose themselves and not have to pay a doctor or something.
Oh, I know so many people. You have so many diagnoses. You either have a small rash or you're dying of Ebola or something.
Right, and I'm not going to compare us to doctors, but that's a ridiculous concept. And the truth is that okay, so now you think you have this technology, so a buyer or a renter is going to go straight to the principal. That's not going to happen either, because guess what? Those two sides don't want to talk to each other.
Yeah.
We need middlemen. We need the experts who do something for a living to help everything work, and those people have to get paid.
They have to. Nobody's working for free, and
Correct.
And the owner doesn't want to deal with the tenant. Oftentimes, the tenant doesn't want to deal with the owner.
Correct. You never want to.
You never want to. Well, sometimes you're a renter, and or just even for a weekend vacation or something, you get something on Airbnb. You don't want to deal with the owner.
Of course
You'd
not.
rather deal with the manager because it's a less emotional. It's more business-like. You're there to enjoy the vacation. You don't want a landlord hovering over you. You see the value of the whole equation. Lisa, this has been absolutely fantastic. You've shared so much great insight with our viewers, and I thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure, and again, thank you for the advice you gave me.
No, my pleasure.
Thank you everyone for listening today. It's been a great episode. Join us next time. We're going to be talking about how to care for your trophy apartment or townhouse. Obviously, the high-end rental market, the high-end sales market's on fire. What do you do after closing? How do you maintain the integrity of the asset? And what are the things you need to look out for after closing? We'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.